The coffee mug didn't shatter when it hit the floor. It just cracked clean down the middle, splitting into two perfect halves like a broken promise. Callie Franklin watched the dark liquid seep into the pearl gray carpet of the executive conference room, spreading slow and deliberate, like blood from a paper cut that won't stop bleeding. She didn't apologize. Didn't scramble for napkins or mumble excuses. Just stood there, fingers still curved around phantom ceramic, while the room held its breath. The VP of Operations, a man named Derek whose last name she'd never bothered to learn, cleared his throat like he was dislodging a marble. As I was saying, he continued, voice dripping with the kind of false sympathy reserved for terminally ill pets, your position is being eliminated as part of our strategic restructuring initiative. Strategic restructuring. Corporate speak for, we're tossing you overboard to make the yacht lighter. Callie had been with Helix Innovations for 14 years. 14 years of 80-hour weeks, skipped holidays, canceled vacations, and birthday cakes eaten cold at midnight in empty break rooms. She'd built their entire compliance framework from scratch after the 2012 regulatory nightmare that almost sank the company. She'd personally saved them from 3 separate federal investigations, negotiated settlements that kept executives out of handcuffs, and rewritten their operational manuals so many times she could recite sections in her sleep. And now, on a Tuesday morning in late September, she was redundant. We appreciate everything you've contributed, Derek added, his smile a thin slash across his face. But we're moving toward a more agile, cloud-based compliance solution. Translation. They'd found a software subscription cheaper than her salary. Callie's eyes drifted to the window. 23 floors below, the city moved like ants in a farm, oblivious to the quiet execution happening in this glass tower. She could see the park where she used to eat lunch before she stopped taking lunch breaks. The coffee shop where she'd spent her own money buying lattes for interns who'd forget her name 6 months later. Your severance package is generous, Derek continued, sliding a thin folder across the mahogany table. 8 weeks plus accumulated PTO. HR will be in touch regarding your exit interview. 8 weeks. For 14 years. Math she could do in her sleep, and it came out to exactly one catastrophic insult. She picked up the folder. Didn't open it. Just held it between her thumb and forefinger like it might be contaminated. The room waited for her reaction. The HR director, a woman named Lydia with a helmet of blonde hair and a perpetual look of concerned confusion, leaned forward slightly, pen poised over her legal pad. Callie stood slowly, deliberately. Her chair rolled back on silent wheels. She straightened her blazer, the navy one she'd bought on sale at Macy's 3 years ago and had dry-cleaned so many times the fabric was starting to shine at the elbows. She met Derek's eyes, held them just long enough to make him uncomfortable, then turned and walked toward the door. Callie, Lydia called after her, voice pitching up with artificial warmth. We'll need you to sign the separation agreement by Friday. Callie paused, hand on the door handle. She didn't turn around. I'll review it with my attorney. She'd never had an attorney. Couldn't afford one. But they didn't need to know that. The door closed behind her with a soft click, the kind of sound that ends chapters. Let me pause here real quick, folks. I know 97% of you are listening to this in your car, at the gym, or while pretending to work. Do me a solid and hit that subscribe button. Tap the like if you've ever been fired by someone who couldn't find their own office without GPS. Helps keep this channel running and prevents me from having to sell essential oils on Instagram. Alright, back to the corporate bloodbath. Callie walked the corridor like she was wading through water. Every step felt weighted, deliberate. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, that particular frequency that lives somewhere between annoying and migraine-inducing. She passed the marketing department's open floor plan, where 20-somethings in hoodies typed furiously on MacBooks covered in activist stickers while sipping kombucha. None of them looked up. She passed the executive assistant pool, where 3 women who'd never spoken to her suddenly became very interested in their computer screens. The elevator took 47 seconds to arrive. He counted. When the doors slid open, she stepped inside and pressed the button for the parking garage, level B3. The descent felt longer than it should have, like falling in reverse. Her car sat in its assigned spot, right where she'd left it 6 hours ago when she'd arrived for what she thought was a routine compliance review meeting. A 2016 Toyota Camry with a dent in the rear bumper from when someone backed into her at a grocery store and drove off. She'd never bothered getting it fixed. Seemed like a waste of money at the time. Now it felt prophetic. She sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, engine off. The parking garage was silent except for the distant hum of ventilation systems and the occasional drip of water from pipes overhead. She stared at the concrete pillar in front of her, painted with a faded yellow B3, that looked like it had been there since the building was constructed in the 90s. Then she reached into her bag, past her wallet and lip balm and the granola bar she'd been saving for an afternoon snack she'd never gotten to eat, and pulled out a small leather portfolio. Red leather, worn at the corners with her initials embossed in gold on the front. A gift from her father when she'd graduated law school, back when she still thought justice was a thing that happened in courtrooms instead of something that got negotiated away in settlements. Inside the portfolio was a single document. 8 pages, printed on ivory paper that had yellowed slightly at the edges. She unfolded it carefully, like handling a historical artifact. Because in a way it was. The title read, Helix Innovations Shareholder Governance Agreement, amended 2011. She drafted it herself. Written every word during a 72-hour marathon session after the company's original founders nearly tore each other apart in a vicious equity dispute. Back then, Helix was still small enough that everyone knew everyone's name. The CEO, a man named Gregory, had personally asked her to create an ironclad framework that would prevent any future hostile takeovers or equity manipulation. Make it bulletproof, he told her. I want language so tight that nobody can wiggle out of it. So she had. Section 7, subsection 3, paragraph B. She'd circled it in red pen years ago, then filed the document away in her personal records because the company had digitized everything and nobody bothered keeping originals anymore. The language was dense, deliberately so. But the meaning was simple. Any merger, acquisition, or substantial equity transaction exceeding $500 million requires written approval from all original compliance officers still holding active shares as of the transaction date. Callie was the last one. The only one. Everyone else had sold their shares during the 2018 liquidity event when the company went semi-public. But Callie had held on to hers. Not out of loyalty or faith in the company's future. She'd just been too busy to deal with the paperwork, and the tax implications seemed complicated. 300 shares. Purchased at $2 each as part of an employee stock option program back in 2011. Worth maybe a few $1,000s now if she bothered to check. Hardly life-changing money. But those shares made her an original stakeholder. And according to Section 7.3b, her signature was required. She pulled out her phone, opened her email, and scrolled until she found the one she'd been ignoring for the past 3 weeks. Subject line, Urgent. Helix Paramount Merger Documentation Required. She'd assumed it was spam at first. Then she'd been too busy to read it. Then she'd forgotten about it entirely because compliance officers don't usually get looped into merger discussions until the legal review phase. She opened it now. The email was from Jonathan, the company's lead counsel. Short, direct, borderline rude. Callie, need your signature on the attached merger approval form ASAP. Deadline is September 30th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Time sensitive. Please confirm receipt. He checked the date. Today was September 29th. Tomorrow at 5, the merger would either close or collapse. She looked at the attachment. A PDF with 14 signature fields. 13 were already filled. Hers was the only one left blank. $930 million. That's what the merger was worth. She'd heard whispers about it in the break room, seen the executive team taking calls in glass-walled offices with the blinds drawn. Paramount Technologies, a massive West Coast firm, was buying Helix. The deal would make everyone in senior leadership obscenely wealthy. Stock options would vest. Golden parachutes would deploy. Derek would probably buy a boat. And all they needed was her signature. Callie smiled. Not a happy smile. The kind of smile that happens when the universe suddenly makes perfect, terrible sense. She started her car, backed out of the space, and drove home. The radio played a song about summer love and convertibles. She turned it off. Her apartment was exactly as she'd left it that morning. Small, tidy, unremarkable. A one-bedroom in a building that had been luxury in 1987 and was now just structurally sound. The kitchen had linoleum floors that curled slightly at the edges. The bathroom had a shower with water pressure that ranged from gentle mist to aggressive drizzle. The living room window looked out onto a parking lot where teenagers practiced skateboard tricks and failed spectacularly. She set her bag on the counter, kicked off her heels, and walked to the small desk in the corner where she kept her personal files. The leather portfolio went on top, open to section 7.3b. Next to it she placed her phone, screen up, email still open. Then she sat down, poured herself a glass of water from the Brita pitcher and waited. The first call came at 3:47 p.m. Unknown number. She let it ring. The second came at 4:02 p.m. Jonathan, lead counsel. She watched his name flash on the screen until it went to voicemail. The third came at 4:15 p.m. Lydia from HR, voicemail. By 4:30 her phone was lighting up like a Christmas tree. Emails flooded her inbox. Urgent. Time sensitive. Please respond immediately. She opened one from Derek. Subject: merger approval critical. The message was 3 paragraphs of corporate panic wrapped in professional language. Callie, we understand there may have been some confusion regarding the timeline for your departure. We'd like to discuss a potential transition period that might better suit everyone's needs. Please call me at your earliest convenience. Translation: we're screwed and we know it. She didn't respond. Just took another sip of water and watched the sun start to dip below the horizon, painting her apartment in shades of amber and regret. At 4:47 p.m., someone knocked on her door. 3 sharp raps, urgent and insistent. She looked through the peephole. A young man in a suit stood there, sweating despite the cool September air, holding a manila envelope like it was a sacred text. She opened the door 3 inches, chain still attached. Miss Franklin. He was breathing hard like he'd run up the stairs. I'm from Helix Legal. We need your signature on a document. It's extremely time-sensitive. I'm aware, Callie said calmly. Great. So if you could just... He held up the envelope, hand shaking slightly. No, she said. He blinked. I'm sorry. No. I'm not signing. But you have to. The merger closes tomorrow. If you don't sign, the whole deal collapses. I'm aware, she repeated. Miss Franklin, please. I was told to tell you that the company is prepared to offer you a revised severance package. 12 weeks instead of 8. Plus a retention bonus if you... I was fired this morning, Callie interrupted, voice flat. You can't retain someone you already threw away. The young man's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion. Panic. The dawning realization that he was standing at the epicenter of a corporate earthquake and had no idea how to stop it. Please, he said again, and this time his voice cracked. My boss will kill me if I come back without your signature. Then I'd suggest updating your resume, Callie said gently. Then she closed the door. She heard him stand there for another 30 seconds, breathing hard, probably debating whether to knock again. Eventually his footsteps retreated down the hallway. Her phone exploded. Texts, emails, voicemails. She turned off the sound and placed it face down on the desk. Then she walked to her couch, sat down and turned on the television. A cooking show was on. Someone was making a soufflé and panicking about oven temperature. She watched it with the mild interest of someone who had absolutely nothing else to do. At 5 p.m. exactly her phone buzzed one last time. He picked it up. An email from Gregory, the CEO. The man who'd hired her 14 years ago. The man who'd asked her to make the governance agreement bulletproof. Subject: please. The message was 2 words: call me. She deleted it. Then she opened a bottle of wine she'd been saving for a special occasion she'd never gotten around to defining, poured herself a glass and watched the sun finish setting. Tomorrow $930 million would disappear. And Callie Franklin would sleep like a baby. The Helix Innovations headquarters building looked different at 7:32 a.m. on September 30th. The glass facade reflected the morning sun in sharp, accusatory angles, like the whole structure was squinting in disbelief at what was about to happen. In the executive suite on the 24th floor, the atmosphere had the strained quality of a funeral where everyone secretly hates the deceased. Gregory stood at the head of the conference table, arms crossed, jaw working like he was chewing glass. He was 58, silver-haired, and had the kind of tan that came from weekend golf games and winter vacations in Scottsdale. This morning he looked 70. Dark circles hung under his eyes like bruises. His tie was crooked. His shirt had a coffee stain near the collar that he either hadn't noticed or didn't care about anymore. Around the table sat the core team. Derek, pale and sweating. Jonathan, the lead counsel, hunched over his laptop like he was searching for a legal loophole in the Code of Hammurabi. Lydia from HR clutching a mug of tea with both hands. And 3 executives from Paramount Technologies, the acquiring company, who had flown in yesterday for what was supposed to be a celebratory signing ceremony and now looked like they were attending a hostage negotiation. "Walk me through this again," said one of the Paramount executives, a woman named Elaine with severe black-rimmed glasses and a voice that could cut steel. "One person, one single employee who was terminated yesterday is holding up a $930 million deal." Jonathan didn't look up from his laptop. "Technically, she's a shareholder. Under the 2011 governance agreement, any merger exceeding $500 million requires approval from all original compliance officers who still hold active shares. And she's the only one left," Gregory added, voice hollow. "How did nobody catch this?" Elaine's tone was surgical. "How does a provision this significant slip through due diligence?" "It's buried in an amended document from 13 years ago," Jonathan said defensively. "The main agreement was digitized and updated multiple times. This section was grandfathered in but never flagged as critical because we didn't think." "You didn't think anyone would still be holding those shares," Elaine finished. "You assumed they'd all been liquidated." Silence. "So call her," Elaine continued. "Negotiate. Offer her money. Whatever it takes." "We tried," Derek said miserably. "She won't answer." "Then go to her house." "We sent someone." "She refused to sign." Elaine removed her glasses and pinched the bridge of her nose. "What does she want?" Gregory laughed, a bitter sound with no humor in it. "That's the thing. She doesn't want anything. She's not making demands. She's not negotiating. She's just not signing." "Everyone wants something," Elaine insisted. "Not her," Gregory said quietly. "She's just watching us burn." The room settled into an uncomfortable silence. Outside the window, the city continued its indifferent morning routine. Traffic moved. Coffee shops opened. The world turned, completely unaware that in this glass tower, a corporate empire was collapsing in slow motion. "What's her background?" asked another Paramount executive, a younger man named Colin who'd been silent until now. "Maybe there's leverage we're missing." Jonathan pulled up a file. Callie Franklin. 43 years old. Single. No kids. Graduated top of her class from Northeastern. Joined Helix right out of law school. Built the entire compliance infrastructure. No disciplinary issues. No performance complaints. Exemplary record. "Until yesterday when you fired her," Colin said flatly. "It wasn't personal," Derek protested. "It was a cost-cutting measure. We're streamlining operations ahead of the merger." "Well, it certainly seems personal now," Elaine muttered. Gregory slumped into his chair. "She wrote that clause. I asked her to make the agreement bulletproof and she did. I just never imagined she'd be the one using it against us." "How long do we have?" Colin asked. "Merger deadline is 5 p.m. today," Jonathan said. "If all signatures aren't collected by then, the deal terminates. Paramount has the right to walk." "And we will," Elaine said coldly. "We're not sitting on a $930 million transaction that hinges on one disgruntled employee's mood. If this doesn't close today, we're out." Gregory's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then looked up. "It's our board chair. He wants an update." "Tell him the truth," Elaine said, standing. "Tell him this deal is dead unless someone can convince Miss Franklin to sign in the next." She checked her watch. 9 hours and 28 minutes. 3 miles away, Callie was making breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice. She ate slowly, deliberately at her small kitchen table. Her phone sat on the counter, face down, still silenced. She'd slept 9 hours straight, the best sleep she'd had in years. After breakfast, she washed her dishes, dried them, put them away. Then she walked to her desk and sat down. The leather portfolio was still there, open to Section 7.3b. Next to it, her unsigned merger approval form sat like an unexploded bomb. She ran her finger along the edge of the document, feeling the texture of the expensive paper they'd printed it on. Someone had used a laser printer, probably in Jonathan's office. The signature line was highlighted in yellow with a small red arrow and the note "Sign here," in handwriting she didn't recognize. She picked up a pen. A basic ballpoint, the kind you get free from hotels. She held it over the signature line, tip hovering above the paper. Then she set it down and walked away. She took a shower. Long, hot, wasteful. The kind of shower you take when you're not rushing to get to an office where nobody appreciates you. She used the expensive conditioner she usually saved for special occasions. Exfoliated. Moisturized. Did a face mask that promised radiant renewal, and delivered something close to acceptable hydration. When she emerged, wrapped in her bathrobe with her hair in a towel, it was 10:15 a.m. Her phone had 73 missed calls. She made coffee. Real coffee, not the instant garbage she usually choked down at 6 a.m. while running out the door. She ground the beans by hand, used the French press her sister had given her for Christmas 3 years ago and that had been sitting in the back of her cabinet ever since. The smell filled her apartment, rich and dark and comforting. At 10:47 a.m., someone knocked on her door again. She looked through the peephole. Lydia from HR stood there alone, looking deeply uncomfortable. She was holding a gift bag. Tissue paper stuck out of the top in cheerful pastels. Callie almost laughed. Instead she opened the door. No chain this time. "Hi, Callie," Lydia said, voice quavering. "Can I come in?" "No," Callie said pleasantly. "But you can say whatever you came to say from right there." Lydia's smile faltered. "I brought you something. A thank you gift. For your years of service." She held up the bag. Callie didn't take it. "What's in it?" "A gift card to that spa you mentioned once. The one downtown. And some artisanal chocolates. And a handwritten card from the team." "What team?" Callie asked. "The one that fired me yesterday?" Lydia's face flushed. "Callie, I know you're upset. You have every right to be. But this merger, it's not just about the executives. If it falls through, the company could collapse. There are 400 employees who could lose their jobs. That's not my problem anymore," Callie said evenly. "I was redundant, remember? Strategic restructuring." "We made a mistake," Lydia said, voice cracking. "Okay? We made a terrible mistake. Derek admits it. Gregory admits it. We should never have let you go. So offer me my job back." "We are," Lydia said desperately. "We're prepared to reinstate you immediately. Full back pay. Promotion to senior compliance officer. 20% raise. Whatever you want." Callie tilted her head. "What I want is for you to leave. Please," Lydia whispered. "Please just sign the document. You can name your price. Seriously. Anything." "I don't have a price," Callie said quietly. "That's what you people never understood. Not everything is transactional." "Then what do you want?" Lydia's voice pitched up into something close to hysteria. "What will it take?" Callie looked at her for a long moment. This woman who'd sat across from her yesterday morning with fake sympathy and legal boilerplate. This woman who'd helped orchestrate her termination and was now standing in her doorway with gift bag bribes and crocodile tears. "I want to watch you fail," Callie said simply. "That's what I want." Then she closed the door. She heard Lydia start crying in the hallway. Heavy, gasping sobs. The kind that come from someone who's just realized their career is circling the drain. Eventually the footsteps retreated. The gift bag stayed on the floor outside Callie's door. She left it there. At 11:30 a.m. her phone rang. This time it wasn't unknown. It was Gregory's direct line. The CEO himself. She stared at the screen for 3 rings. On the 6th ring she answered. "Hello," she said. There was a pause. Like he hadn't actually expected her to pick up and now didn't know what to say. "Callie," Gregory finally said. His voice sounded older than she remembered. "Tired. Thank you for answering." "You have 2 minutes," she said. "I'm sorry." The words came out fast, almost tripping over each other. "I'm sorry for how we handled your termination. It was short-sighted and disrespectful. You deserved better." "Yes," Callie agreed. "I did. I'm asking you," his voice cracked slightly. "I'm begging you to reconsider. Sign the merger approval. Name your terms. Anything you want, it's yours. Anything. Anything." "Make Derek resign," Callie said. Silence. "Make Derek resign," she repeated. "Publicly. with a statement admitting that his cost-cutting initiatives were destructive and that he was wrong to eliminate my position. Gregory hesitated. I can't do that. Derek's a board member. He has contractual protections. Then you can't give me anything I want, Callie said. You can only give me what's convenient for you. Callie, please. I wrote that clause 13 years ago, she interrupted. Section 7.3b. Do you remember why? To protect the company from hostile takeovers. No, Callie said. To protect the company from people like you. From executives who'd sell out the foundation for a quick profit. I made it bulletproof because you asked me to. I just never thought I'd be the one pulling the trigger. If this merger fails, 400 people lose their jobs, Gregory said desperately. Is that what you want? All those people suffering because you're angry? Callie smiled coldly. You know what's funny? Yesterday when you fired me, you didn't care about my suffering. It was just business. Strategic restructuring. But now that it's your suffering, suddenly it's personal. Suddenly I'm supposed to care. This is different. It's not different, she said firmly. It's exactly the same. You're just on the other side of it now. What can I do? Gregory's voice was barely a whisper. Tell me what to do. Nothing, Callie said. There's nothing you can do. That's the point. She hung up. Her hands weren't shaking. Her heart rate was steady. She felt calm. Eerily calm. Like she'd been holding her breath for 14 years and had finally exhaled. She walked back to her desk and looked at the merger document. The signature line was still blank. The pen sat next to it unused. He checked the time. 11:47 a.m. 5 hours and 13 minutes until the deadline. She picked up the document, carried it to her kitchen and placed it on the counter. Then she made herself lunch. A sandwich. Turkey and Swiss with mustard and lettuce. She ate it slowly, savoring every bite. Her phone continued to explode. Texts, emails, voicemails. She ignored all of them. At 2 p.m. there was pounding on her door. Aggressive, angry pounding. She looked through the peephole and saw Derek. His face was red. His tie was gone. His shirt was untucked. He looked like a man on the edge of a nervous breakdown. She didn't open the door. Callie, he shouted through the wood. I know you're in there. Open the door. She stayed silent. Open the damn door. His voice was rising, panicked. You can't do this. This is extortion. I'll have you arrested. She almost laughed. Arrested for not signing a document. The legal illiteracy was stunning. Fine. Derek screamed. Fine. You want to destroy the company? Go ahead. But you're destroying yourself too. Those shares you're holding? They'll be worthless. You'll get nothing. Callie pressed her face close to the door and spoke clearly. I already have nothing, Derek. You made sure of that yesterday. She heard him suck in a breath. Then he slammed his palm against the door once, twice. It rattled in its frame. You're insane, he hissed. You're a psychopath. No, Callie said calmly. I'm just done being invisible. She walked away from the door. The pounding continued for another minute, then stopped. She heard Derek's footsteps retreating, heard him screaming into his phone in the hallway about lawyers and contracts and legal options. At 3 p.m., a news alert popped up on her laptop. Helix Paramount merger in jeopardy. Sources cite last-minute complications. He clicked on it. The article was vague, full of corporate hedging and speculation. But buried in the third paragraph was a quote from an anonymous source. The delay appears to be related to shareholder approval requirements. Paramount executives are reportedly considering withdrawing from the transaction. By 3:30 p.m., the story had been picked up by Bloomberg, Reuters, and the Wall Street Journal. Helix's stock price was plummeting in after-hours trading. Industry analysts were speculating about the company's future. One headline read, "What happens when a $930 million deal falls apart?" Callie read them all, sitting at her desk with a cup of tea, while her unsigned merger document sat next to her like a loaded gun. At 4 p.m. her doorbell rang. She looked through the peephole and froze. Gregory stood there. Not Derek. Not Lydia. Not some junior associate tasked with cleanup duty. The CEO himself. He looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot. His suit jacket was rumpled. He was alone. She opened the door. "May I come in?" he asked quietly. She stepped aside. He walked past her into the small living room, looking around like he was seeing how normal people lived. His eyes landed on the desk, on the leather portfolio, on the unsigned document. You kept the original agreement, he said. You told me to keep good records, Callie replied. He turned to face her. I came here to tell you a story. Will you listen? She gestured to the couch. He sat. She remained standing. 20 years ago, Gregory began, I was exactly where you are now. Angry. Betrayed. Fired from a company I'd helped build. I wanted to burn it all down. Did you? Callie asked. No. I let it go. Took another job. Moved on. And you know what happened? What? Nothing, Gregory said. Absolutely nothing. The people who screwed me over went on to make millions. The company thrived. And I spent years wondering what would have happened if I'd fought back. So you're saying I should fight back? Callie said slowly. No, Gregory said. I'm saying I understand why you want to. I'm saying I don't blame you. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the sounds of the city filtered through the walls. Car horns. Distant sirens. The hum of existence continuing regardless of their conversation. If this merger fails, Gregory continued, the company probably won't survive. We've been burning capital for 3 years. This acquisition was our exit strategy. Without it, we'll have to liquidate. 400 people will lose their jobs. Including me. Good, Callie said simply. Gregory nodded. I deserve that. We all do. But those 400 people? They don't. The interns and assistants and maintenance staff? They didn't fire you. They didn't even know who you were. And they'll suffer most. That's not my fault, Callie said. No, Gregory agreed. It's mine. And Derek's. And the entire executive team's. We created this situation. We backed you into a corner. We gave you the power to destroy us and then acted shocked when you considered using it. He stood, walked to the desk and picked up the merger document. He looked at the blank signature line. You wrote this clause to protect the company, he said. To make sure that people like me couldn't sell out the foundation without accountability. But you never intended to use it like this, did you? I never intended to get fired, Callie countered. No, Gregory said quietly. You didn't. And that's on us. He set the document down and walked back to the door. His hand rested on the knob. I'm not going to beg, he said. And I'm not going to offer you money or your job back or any of the other desperate bribes we've been throwing around. I'm just going to say this. You have the power to make this decision. Whatever you choose, I'll respect it. If you want to sign, sign. If you want to watch us fail, watch us fail. Either way, you win. He opened the door. Gregory, Callie said. He paused. Why did you fire me? He turned back to face her. Derek convinced the board that we needed to cut costs. That compliance could be automated. That your role was redundant. I should have fought harder. I should have protected you. I didn't. And I'm sorry. He left, closing the door quietly behind him. Callie stood in her living room alone, with the weight of $930 million pressing down on her shoulders. She walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot. The teenagers were still there, still failing at skateboard tricks. One of them landed a jump and his friends cheered. Simple. Uncomplicated. Free. He checked the time. 4:17 p.m. 43 minutes until the deadline. Her phone rang one last time. An unknown number. She answered. Miss Franklin. A woman's voice, unfamiliar. Yes. This is Amanda. I work in Helix facilities. You don't know me. I'm one of the night cleaners. Callie's breath caught. Okay. I heard about what's happening. About the merger. I just wanted to tell you. The woman's voice wavered. I have 3 kids. This job pays for their daycare while I finish nursing school. If Helix goes under, I don't know what I'll do. Callie closed her eyes. I'm not calling to beg, Amanda continued. I just wanted you to know that I exist. That there are people here who aren't executives or lawyers. Just people trying to survive. Thank you, Callie whispered. Whatever you decide, Amanda said, I hope you find peace with it. The call ended. Callie stood there, phone in hand, staring at nothing. She thought about 14 years of invisible labor. Of skipped holidays and midnight oil and compliance frameworks nobody appreciated until they needed them. She thought about Derek's smug face as he eliminated her position. About Lydia's fake sympathy. About the breakroom conversations she was never invited to and the promotions that went to people who'd contributed half as much and received twice the credit. She thought about revenge. How sweet it would taste. How clean. How final. Then she thought about Amanda. 3 kids. Nursing school. Night shifts scrubbing floors in a building that would soon be empty and dark. She thought about the interns who gossiped by the coffee machine. The maintenance staff. The accounts payable clerks who processed invoices and went home to second jobs. People who had nothing to do with her firing but everything to do with the collateral damage. Callie walked to her desk. Picked up the pen. Held it over the signature line. Her hand trembled. Not from fear. From fury. From the sheer injustice of being put in this position. Of having to choose between her dignity and other people's livelihoods. Of being the villain or the martyr with nothing in between. She set the pen down. Then she picked up her phone and dialed Jonathan's direct line. He answered on the first ring. Callie. I have conditions, she said. Anything. Name it. First, Derek resigns. Today. Before the market closes. I want a public statement. Done. Second, my severance is revised. 26 weeks. Full benefits continuation for 1 year. And a formal letter of recommendation from Gregory himself. Done. What else? Third, and this is non-negotiable. You establish a fund. $500,000. For employee hardship assistance. Managed by an independent third party. Available to any non-executive staff member facing financial emergency. It gets announced today along with the merger. Jonathan was quiet for a moment. That's actually brilliant. The board will approve it. I guarantee it. Fourth, my shares vest immediately at the post-merger valuation. I'm not waiting for your standard vesting schedule. Agreed. And finally, Callie said, voice hardening, I want every executive in that building to know exactly why this almost fell apart. I want it in the merger announcement. I want my name in the press release. I want everyone to know that one redundant employee nearly torpedoed a $930 million deal because you forgot she existed. I'll write it myself, Jonathan said. Callie, I swear to you we'll meet every single condition. Just please. I'm not finished, she interrupted. I want all of this in writing. Legally binding. Signed by Gregory and the board chair. Delivered to my apartment within the next 20 minutes. If I don't have documentation by 4:45, the deal dies. We'll have it there in 15, Jonathan promised. Thank you, Callie. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, she said coldly. I haven't signed anything. She hung up. At 4:29 p.m., a courier arrived at her door. A different one this time, professional calm. He handed her a leather portfolio containing 6 pages of legal documents. Every condition she'd specified was there, formatted in dense legal language, signed at the bottom by Gregory, the board chair, and 3 witnesses. She read every word. Every clause. Every subsection. She checked the signatures against her mental database of executive handwriting. She verified the dates and timestamps. It was all there. Legitimate. Binding. She looked at the courier. You're supposed to wait for a response? Yes, ma'am. I'm not allowed to leave until you sign the merger approval or the clock runs out. Callie glanced at her phone. 4:34 p.m. She walked to her desk. Picked up the merger approval document. Looked at the blank signature line one last time. Then she picked up her pen and signed her name. Callie Franklin. Blue ink. Deliberate cursive. The signature that would release $930 million and save 400 jobs and end the career of the man who'd fired her. She handed it to the courier. Tell them it's done. He practically ran out of her apartment. Callie stood there in the sudden silence. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was calm. She felt nothing. Not victorious. Not satisfied. Just tired. She walked to her couch and sat down. Picked up her phone. The notifications had stopped. The panic had ended. The crisis was over. At 4:47 p.m. her phone buzzed with a news alert. Breaking, Helix Paramount merger approved in last-minute deal. Sources say employee action nearly derailed transaction. At 4:52 p.m., an email arrived from Gregory. Thank you. I mean that. Thank you. She deleted it without responding. At 5 p.m. exactly, the merger officially closed. $930 million changed hands. Stock options vested. Golden parachutes deployed. Champagne bottles popped in executive offices across the building. And in a small apartment 3 miles away, Callie Franklin poured herself a glass of water, turned on the television, and watched the news coverage of a corporate merger that would have collapsed without her signature. The story exploded overnight. By the next morning, her name was everywhere. The compliance officer who nearly killed a billion-dollar deal. How one fired employee held a Fortune 500 company hostage. The woman who made executives beg. Some articles painted her as a hero. Others as a villain. Most just called her smart. Derek resigned at 8 a.m. on October 1st. The press release was terse, professional, and clearly written by a lawyer. After careful consideration, Derek has decided to pursue other opportunities. We thank him for his service and wish him well. No mention of cost-cutting disasters or wrongful terminations. But everyone knew. The Employee Hardship Fund was announced at 9 a.m. $500,000, managed by an independent nonprofit, available immediately. Amanda from Facilities Management was the first to apply. Her application was approved within 48 hours. She cried when she got the notification. Callie's severance package arrived via certified mail. 26 weeks of full salary. Benefits continuation. A letter of recommendation from Gregory that used words like invaluable and irreplaceable and exemplary. She read it once, then filed it away. Her shares vested on October 5th at the post-merger valuation. After taxes, the payout came to $73,000. Not life-changing money, but enough. Enough to take a real vacation. Enough to pay off her car. Enough to breathe. The media request started on October 3rd. Morning shows wanted interviews. Business podcast wanted her story. A literary agent emailed about book rights. He declined them all. On October 8th, she received a handwritten letter. No return address. The handwriting was shaky, unpracticed. Dear Miss Franklin, I'm one of the warehouse workers at Helix. I saw what you did. I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I wanted to say thank you. My daughter starts college next year and I was terrified I'd lose this job before I could help her with tuition. You saved us. Not just me. All of us. I hope wherever you end up they treat you better. Sincerely, Robert. Callie folded the letter carefully and placed it in her desk drawer. Next to the leather portfolio. Next to section 7.3b. She never went back to Helix. Never set foot in that building again. Didn't attend the merger celebration or the employee thank you luncheon or any of the corporate events that followed. She took November off. Slept late. Read books. Took long walks. Let herself be bored for the first time in 14 years. In December she started interviewing. Not for compliance officer positions. Not for corporate jobs. She looked at nonprofits. Advocacy groups. Organizations that valued the invisible labor she'd spent her career perfecting. On December 18th, she accepted a position as Director of Legal Affairs for a workers' rights organization. The salary was 30% less than what Helix had paid her. The office was smaller. The benefits were modest. But when she walked through the door on her first day, the executive director shook her hand and said, "We're lucky to have you." And for the first time in 14 years, Callie believed it. 6 months later, she was cleaning out her apartment before moving to a bigger place. One with actual water pressure and floors that didn't curl at the edges, when she found the leather portfolio at the bottom of a box. She pulled it out, dusted it off, and opened it to section 7.3b. The language was still there. Dense. Deliberate. Bulletproof. Final merger approvals require written approval from all original compliance officers still holding active shares as of the transaction date. She ran her finger along the words she'd written 13 years ago when she was young and idealistic and believed that protecting the company meant protecting herself. She'd been wrong. But in being wrong, she'd built herself an escape hatch she didn't know she'd need. She closed the portfolio and placed it on a shelf in her new home office. Not hidden. Not displayed. Just there. A reminder that the most powerful thing you can do is protect your own foundation, even when the people above you forget it exists. Her phone buzzed. A text from her new colleague. Team lunch at noon? Thai place around the corner. She smiled and typed back, "I'll be there." Then she grabbed her bag, locked the door behind her, and walked out into a future she'd built not with revenge but with refusal. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say isn't yes. It's no. And sometimes the most devastating thing you can do isn't destroy someone's empire. It's just make them wait while you decide whether they deserve to keep it. 3 years later, Callie sat in a conference room at the Workers' Rights Organization, leading a training session on corporate compliance for a group of young advocates fresh out of law school. They looked at her with the same eager intensity she'd once had, back when she thought justice was something you could legislate. "Here's what they don't teach you in law school," she said, leaning against the table. "Power isn't always about having the biggest title or the loudest voice. Sometimes it's about knowing where the leverage points are and having the patience to wait for the right moment to press them." One of the advocates raised her hand. "Are you talking about the Helix merger?" Callie smiled. The story had become legend in certain circles. A cautionary tale for executives. An inspiration for underdogs. A case study in corporate governance programs across the country. "I'm talking about every situation where someone in power assumes you don't matter," Callie said. "The key is to make sure you have something they need before they realize you have it." "But how do you know what they'll need?" another advocate asked. "You don't always," Callie admitted. "Sometimes you just build protections because it's the right thing to do. You write clear contracts. You keep good records. You hold on to assets others think are worthless. And sometimes, years later, those protections become weapons." The room was silent, absorbing this. "The other thing they don't teach you," Callie continued, "is that revenge is easy. It's the simplest thing in the world. What's hard is knowing when to walk away. When to take the win without burning everything down. When to use your power to build something instead of just destroying what exists." "Do you regret signing?" someone asked. "Do you wish you'd let the deal collapse?" Callie thought about this. About Amanda and her 3 kids. About Robert and his daughter's college tuition. About the 400 people who still had jobs because she'd made a choice. "No," she said finally. "I don't regret it. But I also don't regret making them sweat for every single second before I signed. They needed to understand what they'd almost lost. What they'd almost destroyed." "Did they learn?" an advocate asked skeptically. Callie laughed. "Some of them. Derek's been unemployed for 3 years. Can't get hired anywhere because everyone knows what he did. Gregory retired early and now does consulting on ethical leadership. Whether he actually means it or is just rebranding his failure is anyone's guess." And Helix merged with Paramount. Restructured. Half the executive team was replaced within a year. The company still exists, but it's not the same place. Maybe that's for the best. She gathered her notes, signaling the end of the session. But before anyone could leave, she added one more thing. The most important lesson isn't about contracts or leverage or even revenge. It's this: document everything. Know your worth. And never, ever assume that being invisible means being powerless. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one holding all the cards. The advocates filed out, energized and thoughtful. Callie packed up her materials and walked back to her office, where a framed article hung on the wall. Not about the Helix merger. About the workers' rights case she'd just won against a manufacturing conglomerate that had been exploiting contract workers for years. That case had made a real difference. Changed actual lives. And nobody had written think pieces about her methods or debated whether she was a hero or a villain. They'd just won. That evening, as she drove home through the city, she passed the Helix building. It had new signage now. Paramount's branding. Different colors. She didn't feel anything looking at it. No anger. No satisfaction. Just a distant recognition, like seeing a house you used to live in and barely remembering what the rooms looked like. Her phone rang. Her sister. "Hey," Callie answered. "Are you watching the news?" her sister asked excitedly. "No, why?" "There's a whole segment about you. Well, not you specifically, but about employees who used corporate bylaws to fight back. They're calling it the Franklin effect. Companies are rewriting their governance agreements because they're terrified someone else will do what you did." Callie smiled. "Good. You're famous." "I'm notorious," Callie corrected. "There's a difference. Aren't you excited?" "I'm tired," Callie said honestly. "And I'm going home to eat leftover pasta and watch reality TV. That's exciting enough." Her sister laughed. "You're impossible." "I'm free," Callie said. Finally. When she got home she did exactly what she'd promised. Heated up pasta. Poured a glass of wine. Turned on a show about people competing to make cakes shaped like celebrities. It was stupid and mindless and exactly what she needed. Her laptop sat on the coffee table closed. Her phone was on silent. The leather portfolio was on the shelf where she'd left it, gathering dust. She didn't need it anymore. The power it represented had been used, spent, transformed into something else. Something better. Because here's the thing about power. It's only useful if you know when to use it and when to let it go. Callie had held $930 million hostage for exactly one day. Long enough to make her point. Long enough to change the trajectory of her life and hundreds of others. But she hadn't held on so long that it consumed her. Hadn't let revenge become her identity. Hadn't become the bitter woman who spent the rest of her life fighting yesterday's battles. She'd used her power, then walked away. Built something new. Moved forward. And in a world obsessed with dramatic endings and satisfying revenge, sometimes the most radical thing you can do is choose peace. Not forgiveness. She hadn't forgiven them. Probably never would. But peace. The kind that comes from knowing you stood up when it mattered. That you didn't let them erase you without consequence. That you used your invisible power to reshape the landscape just enough that people like Amanda and Robert could keep their jobs and their dignity. That was enough. That was everything. Callie took another bite of pasta and watched a contestant's celebrity cake collapse in slow motion. She laughed, alone in her apartment, finally comfortable with the sound of her own voice in the silence. Because the story wasn't really about a merger or a signature or $930 million. It was about a woman who spent 14 years being invisible, who got fired for being redundant, and who discovered that sometimes the most powerful thing you can be is exactly what they underestimate. Invisible. Until the moment you choose not to be. And then, when you've made your point, when you've reshaped the world just enough to make them remember you existed, you disappear again. On your own terms. Into a life you actually want to live. That's not revenge. That's freedom. And Callie Franklin, formerly redundant compliance officer, currently director of legal affairs, permanently underestimated woman, had finally found it.